Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority Board of Directors meeting. It is Thursday, September 18th, and we do have a quorum present. First on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Do we have any, do we have somebody who'd like to make a motion to accept the agenda as it's written?
So moved, Rich.
Okay, and seconded by? Seconded by Georgia. All those in favor, raise your hand. And that passed unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Next on our agenda, 1.2, is public comment. I see we have some folks in the gallery. Do we have anybody online? Okay. Did they happen to sign in? Deb, do you have a sign-in sheet for them?
I do, but they didn't provide their names. If you just want to give that when you go up.
Yeah. Okay. We start a public comment. Each person will get 3 minutes. And it's just an informational, the board will not respond tonight, but if it's something that you have that may be of staff interest, staff may be getting back with you after the meeting if it's requested. So whoever would like to come forward first.
Okay, we're kind of all here together. Hi, my name's Emily Wall. I am a co-director at the Daytime Warming Center, an employee of the Shelter Association of Washtenaw County. And we, one of our biggest problems, actually maybe our biggest problem, is folks taking the bus to our warming center, especially when it's cold out. And we've been in conversation with some other cities about what they do about that. And we found over a couple dozen cities that just when it's really cold, people can get on the bus and say they're going to a warming center and just go. The token system is really difficult for us. Often we buy up all of your tokens at one time and still don't have enough for our guests. And so we would love to talk. We talked with some staff last spring, but then staff haven't been responding to our emails this fall. We would love to meet with staff or with people in decision-making power about some proposals about how we could help our guests when it's really cold so that people aren't stuck wherever they are freezing and can't get to our shelters. We have some funds for this and are interested in maybe if funds are a problem, some upfront costs so that we can circumvent the tokens, but ideally I know ridership is not the biggest part of your budget, and this is a fairly small number of guests who ride to our warming centers, but it's really, really important that they be able to get there in the winter, and these tokens are the biggest barrier.
Thank you.
I would love to know if people who I could contact or how people could contact us about this. Thank you.
That's Mr. Carpenter, our CEO.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for your comment. Was that the only one from all three of you then?
I can also go.
Okay. Please
Hi.
introduce yourself.
Oh yeah. Hi, my name is Sim.
Mike.
Fun. I'm one of the volunteer coordinators at Purple House, which is an overnight winter respite shelter, all volunteer run. It's off the 5. It's on Stone School Road, and similarly we buy a lot of tokens. Most guests get to the house via the bus and leave there in the morning as well. They're the tokens are really hard to manage, and it's also hard for people who might be coming to stay at the house but don't have a way to get a token earlier in the day to get to the house, even if they are able to stay at the house. So yeah, I sent an email to Jeffrey Pfeiffer, I believe, in the end of August, kind of requesting to meet about this, and similarly sharing other cities that have free fare programs in the winter, but I didn't get a response, so we figured we would come here. And Purple House and the Warming Center, they work pretty closely together, so we'd be happy to meet all together and try to figure something out. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to speak as well?
I'm all right. I
Okay.
think they said it well.
All right, thank you very much. And Deb, you said there isn't anyone online? No. All right, then that closes our public comment, and we're on to general announcements. I do have one. The audit task force has been formed. We will be meeting shortly. I'd like to thank board members Chris Allen and Georgia Valentine for volunteering on the audit task force along with myself, and we look forward to getting started with our auditors and with staff very soon. So I just wanted to let everyone know, thank you for your time. And then, are there any other comments or announcements? Matt, did you have any for this evening? Nope, okay. Seeing none, we will move on. And the next is the consent agenda. Would someone like to move the consent agenda? So moved by Susan, seconded by Julie, and all those, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hands. And that passed unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Moving right along, we have the Ownership Linkage Task Force updates, and that's Mr. Chan.
Hello, everyone. So we have Ipsy Township scheduled to meet next Friday, September 26th. City Ipsy, they're still trying to get that scheduled, and Ann Arbor is still in progress. I'm still trying to get in front of one more city council member, but I know them is super busy, so I just continue to ping them to see when we get in front of them. That's it.
Great. Does anyone have any questions for Rich? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the policy 5.0, because there's nothing under monitoring this month. There is monitoring, but we put it all under policy because we want to have the budget discussion first. 5.1, Mr. Carpenter is going to tee us up. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give a brief introduction, thank you, to the budgeting process, as we've discussed on numerous occasions, and then I'll turn it over to Dina. Just really quickly, a quick reminder, we have a two-step budget approval process. The first step will be the monitoring report for your policies pertaining to planning and budgeting. Those are the expectations created by the board about how budgeting should be done. Dina will present that information first. If you accept that report, as we hope you will, that kind of indicates that we've met your expectations for how budgeting should be done. That's a first step. The second step is the actual direct approval of the budget itself. And so Dina will make a larger presentation with all of the details and beautiful charts that you've come to expect. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Reed.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, item 5.1.1, Financial Planning and Budgeting Monitoring Report 2.4 is in your packet. The staff submitted the monitoring report to the board as fully compliant. It was reviewed by the board and then reviewed at the Finance Committee meeting on September 9th in more detail. Staff did recognize there were some comments, so we're reviewing those and we'll take those into consideration for any future monitoring reports. Most of the comments were about maybe wording that wasn't quite clear, so we're just going to review that, and if there are any comments, we'll also hear that. But from the comments here, we'll take a look at that for the next monitoring report as well. But it does look like the board and the finance committee both reviewed and acknowledged that it was compliant. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the monitoring report at this time, or turn it back over to you.
Okay. Chris, can you, it's not that I don't believe you.
Yes, I know where you're going with that. Yes, the finance committee did meet, and we found the monitoring report to be in compliance, not needing any modifications. So accordingly, I think it's at 1A is just in compliance. No further changes needed at this time.
Oh.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions from the board? All right. Sorry, I've been trying to pull up my agenda, so I'm unfortunately not as prepared to be back up as I normally am.
So I could make a motion to accept monitoring report 2.4 as 1A in compliance. No
All right, thank you.
modifications needed.
All right, do I have a second? Oh, second by Julie. Any further discussion? And seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hands. All those opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Okay. Yes, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the budget presentation and approval.
just, with anticipation. Okay. I think we've got the technology now. There we go. Okay, good evening, everyone. Dina Reed, happy to present the budget to you tonight, the recommended budget. The plan for this evening is to just go through some of the key points from the budgeting process and the budget, and then ultimately make sure that we're able to answer any board questions and so on, and then ultimately ask for approval. This is the board meeting where we request approval. We need approval before October 1, so I'll kind of get into it. Start out by talking about some of our budget processes and policies. Our budget process is very collaborative, takes a while, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work because we focus so much on transparency and collaboration, making sure we're focused on policies, advancing our strategic mission. And so this kind of illustrates that a little bit, and then also shares the timeline that we've been through since the beginning of the spring, so May, June, and so on. And the little graphic at the lower right corner just kind of indicates that we're really close to the finish line. We're hoping to cross that finish line together tonight. So I'm not going to go through all of these because I'm sure the board is very familiar with your ends. I just want to make sure that we kind of put up here the ends so that other folks can see them, so they know what we're focused on achieving when we think about our strategic planning and budgeting process. These little indicators here, the people and the green environment and all those little symbols, you'll see them throughout the presentation. It's just a little indicator and a reminder of how the budget is tying back to the board's ends in different ways. So first of all, just want to remind folks that we do a business planning process at the beginning of the budget. So annually, we'll go through all of our strategic objectives, think about what goals we want to accomplish, set plans for those goals, and then ultimately fund priorities and initiatives related to those goals through the budget process. These are the key business plan priorities for this year, and we've been talking about them throughout the process, so hopefully they look familiar to you. But it's very important to us to maintain and grow customer service and attract new riders and ridership, and continue agency-wide continuous improvement. And with that, I'll get into some numbers. We can't have a fun budget presentation without some numbers, so let's go. First of all, our key accomplishments for the budget this year are we're funding all of our service levels at full capacity, so everything we promised in the millage is funded. We are not changing fares. We are dealing with a challenge with lower state operating assistance, but we're able to work through that through the budget process. And we are presenting a balanced budget, which is required by state law, and also very important to make sure you're not living beyond your means, so to speak. Also, all of our capital projects for 2026 are funded. So just to give you a high-level overview, talked a little bit about some of the key points here, but we're presenting a budget today that's almost $100 million in total when you add operating and capital together. We're funding all the operations that we just mentioned. We're maintaining our capital investments required to maintain our assets and do some expansion work. We're presenting all of this in the context of a 7-year budget projection, so you can see that we have a longer-term plan than just 1 year. And we're including a 10-year capital projection as well in all of our projects planned through 10 years and all the funding associated with that. So as I mentioned, the operating budget is balanced. It's $71.5 million revenues and expenses. I'd say the biggest challenge in this budget cycle was the decrease that we experienced in state operating assistance. We're still watching that. There's still no state budget. It is still a risk in the budget. We'll talk more about that later. But I just wanted to mention the upside of this is that property tax revenues came in strong, a little bit higher than what we had originally projected. So we've adjusted for that. And the good news is we have strong revenue sources. 85% of our budget is those two revenues. Kind of the downside of that is there's not a lot of flexibility. So when your budget is reliant on two primary revenue sources that are stable, that's a great thing, but you don't have a lot of other ways to make up revenue if something goes down. So we have to watch that closely, and to counter that, we manage expenses. You can see here that or over 75% of our budget goes directly to transportation services. So kind of low administration, and then we break out utilities and insurance here too. But ultimately, the main point here is that the money that we're collecting is going right back into service. So this pie chart tells basically where the money comes from. I just talked about that a little bit. This is a nice graphic to kind of show the proportion. The blue light, both shades of blue, if you kind of add those together, those are all what we call local funds. They're passenger revenues, they're generated from the system as well as local property taxes. So funding that is really coming from the communities that we serve. And so I wanted to make a point that that's more than half, which is great. Great local support for our budget. State operating assistance is lower this year at 26.6%, and then we've had a small amount of other funding sources for subrecipients and pass-through. We have several initiatives in the budget. The biggest initiative or tie back to the board's ends is more service hours and frequencies, which were promised in the millage and are fully funded here. So that's important for maintaining and attracting new riders. We're really focused on excellence in service delivery. So you can see there are some things here that we're doing consistently that make sure that our service remains the quality that we want it to be, the high quality expectation that our customers deserve and expect. And then we have continuous improvement projects that are mostly related to internal adjustments, things that we're trying to do to make things better, and then administration facility upgrades is more to our facility, but it's for staff and to provide facilities that are in line with the expectations of maintaining critical services. The key changes in the operating budget, revenues went up and expenses went up, but at the end of the day, we balanced the budget. These are some of the key points related to those revenues and expenses. It does look a little strange that revenues and expenses are a different number and the budget is still balanced, but that's because last year, this is compared to last year's budget, and there was a surplus planned last year, which we are not planning this year, so it just comes out even. And then just as importantly, I said that we showed you, there's more detail in your budget document that we provided, but what I'm showing here is that through the projection period of the millage, which goes through 2028 and actually carries us through into 2029, you can see that when we project revenues expenses over a longer period of time, we're still projecting that revenues will equal or be slightly better than expenses until after the millage period. If you look out a little further, starting in 2030, you can see that revenues are starting to look a little bit lower than expenses. That's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on and address in the next millage. But most important position is that our financial projection is stable. We anticipate to have funding through the projection period with positive fund balance. All of our established reserves are fully funded, have not been used for operations, and we have no debt. Talk a little bit about the capital budget. Capital budget is $24.9 million. We like to categorize things in the capital budget by these three main categories. State of good repair is basically taking care of the things that we have. Value added is doing things that add value to things that we already do. An expansion of service is expanding something beyond what we're doing today. So that's kind of what these things mean. And you can see we have strong investments in all three areas, with the biggest one being a state of good repair, which means we're taking care of our buses, we're taking care of our facilities, we're making sure we have what we need and that it maintains in a state of good repair. Here are some examples of some projects that are in the capital plan, in the state of good repair plan. So I talked a little bit about internal process improvements and renovations. And so I talked just now about the numbers, but here's kind of a picture that illustrates what building we're talking about. So we're doing some renovations in our DGOC, which is where our administrative facilities are, and our bus garage. We're maintaining our fleet. We're preparing to do some significant technology replacements. This year in the capital plan, it's funded at a little bit of a lower level because we're in the planning phase. We're going to get consulting help and plan some pretty big technology replacements, and that is evidenced in the capital plan in the future years. We also have, like I mentioned, value added and expansion projects, and these are just a few of the big ones. We've talked about the YTC, and we'll continue to talk about that because it's the project that's closest to on the horizon of what we're planning to do in construction. So you may have noticed in your capital budget that at the end of fiscal 2026, we are actually moving towards construction. So there's a few slides coming up to talk a little bit more about that, but I just wanted to make sure I pointed it out here because it's a significant step for us, our first major project in quite some time. And we are funded and moving forward with that project, and we'll talk about that more in a second. A few more projects, planning and design for the BRT and the bus maintenance and storage facility. We're furthering our bus stop improvement program. So I think that was presented at a different board meeting where we have bus stops over the next few years. So that is fully funded. That plan is funded in our budget as well. And then I would be remiss not to mention that expansion projects that are in the capital budget are aligned with the RIDE 45, which was approved by the board. So just want to make a note that everything that we're planning here was discussed and anticipated in the RIDE 45, and now we're moving forward 1 year at a time. It's important to note where we get the money for all these great projects. Right now, we're pretty much federal and state funded. We have some congressionally directed spending in the budget for fiscal 26, and that's for the YTC project. So we did get a large grant, over $7 million. Well, $7 million of federal funding, and there's a state match and so on, but that's where this funding is coming from. But we are in a good position with our grants for 2026 and have a fully funded 2026 budget from grants and congressionally directed spending. And we have to talk a little bit about capital. We're not funding any projects in 2026 from the capital reserve. And I also like to note, this graph kind of depicts what's in the capital reserve today, what years we made contributions to the capital reserve. You can see that 24 through 28, we don't have any planned distributions from the capital reserve. We would need board approval to do that. That would usually come when we talk about construction. So it's not requested in this budget today, and it would be requested as we move forward with other projects if needed. You can see that if we don't get additional funding from some of our capital projects by 2029, we would start drawing down on our plan. Our financial plan is that we would start drawing down on the capital reserve to fund projects. But those discussions will be plentiful in the next few years, and that can change dramatically depending on what kinds of funding we get for projects as we go through each project. So I just want to summarize a lot of what I said today and maybe things I said before. Our 2026 budget is just under $100 million in total, $71.5 million for operating expenses, $24.9 million for capital. I also want to share that with everything all included, operations, capital, this is our cash position at the end of each fiscal year currently and our projection. You can see we're in a very strong cash position until we get to 2029. We're still in a strong cash position in 29. However, there's a big drop, and that big drop is illustrative of what we would, if we had to use the capital reserve funds, as I just showed you on the prior slide, that we'd be drawing down on that cash in 2029, so it would come out of the account. Again, lots of things to do over the next few years, but this is illustrative of what the assumptions are in the budget at this time. I talked a little bit about risks, so I just want to touch on a few more, but first I want to mention a couple of opportunities. We are fully funded in our reserves. You can just see that our cash position is very strong for what we need to do in our budget and both operating and capital and in our reserves. We don't have any debt. We're maintaining our service to our communities and we're executing on our long-range plan. These are all opportunities for us to continue to operate strongly for our communities and maintain fiscal responsibility. We have an approved millage through 2028, and that millage does kind of provide some funding for 2029, but if we don't get a new millage before then we'd have to be having a more totally different discussion. But for right now, in good shape for the next several years. Some risks that we do have in the budget that I want to be clear about. we have budgeted that and all the projections assume that we get 26 and 4 decimal places of percent of our operating expense in terms of funding. We don't know what that budget's going to be. There's a lot going on in Lansing. I think that we've been keeping you well apprised. Jeff has given some great information, and will continue to keep the board updated. If the funding drops or in any way changes, that percentage could change as well. And if that percentage changes, our plan is to watch all the other sources of revenues that we have to see if it will compensate for any reduction. We could end up with more money, so that would be a nice upside, but we would still be held to the expenses that the board approves today. So if we did get more funding and wanted to use that funding in 2026, we'd have to come to the board for an amendment because we can't exceed the bottom line of what you're approving today. But it can go either way. It's a risk in the budget. We're watching it, and there are lots of contingency plans in place in the event that it does not come in where we expect it, and or some other funding source changes as well. There's a lot of economic uncertainty related to the cost of goods. There's there's tariffs, a lot of different things. We've seen expenses grow consistently year over year. It's not a new thing. But we're watching what's happening, and to the extent possible, locking in contracts for multiple years. Usually that's one good way to save money if we can, is to maintain those contracts because you're guaranteed a certain amount. And so that you can usually manage that a little bit. Competitively bidding and soliciting projects is very important, something that we do a lot, all the time, actually, if it's over $20,000, and that's in our procurement policy. But just wanted to touch on that we have ways that we're managing through some of these risks. Labor negotiations is coming up. That's going to happen next year. We don't know exactly, how that will turn out. So we'll be talking a lot about that with the board, and then moving into that through next year. It would impact fiscal 2026, whatever that agreement is, will impact 2026, the last quarter. So 3 months of the fiscal year, so not a huge risk to 2026. It could be a risk to future years as well, something we'll have to manage as much as possible. Cost inflations, we talked about that. On the capital side, it's an issue as well. So just a reminder, we have big major projects coming up, and if those projects get delayed or we don't complete them on time, then the costs that are in the capital plan will change. It's likely that costs will go up. We do factor cost inflation in the capital program over the period, just like we do on the operating side. So there is some cushion in there already in the projection for inflation. But again, we don't know exactly what that will be, so it's a risk. And then federal funding for capital. We are currently under the IIJA bill for federal transit funding. And that bill ends in September of 2026. So not a major impact maybe to 2026, but to following years, the amount of funding that will come through whatever the next bill is a risk. So just wanted to point those things out. We're aware of them, we're watching them, we're having contingency plans where we need to be prudent. And then these are the key budget accomplishments. Again, I'm not going to go through them all. I've mentioned them several times, but I wanted to make sure I kind of closed out my initial discussion and comments with highlighting those budget accomplishments. We're very proud of the collaborative nature of the accomplishments, and appreciate all the board's input and support through the process as well. So I'll pause and ask if there are questions about anything in the presentation and the budget document, any information you need at this point.
Any questions from the board for Dina? For Vina.
Is this on? Okay. Thank you so much. My question is about the millage that ends in, was it 28?
Yes.
Yeah. So is it usually 27 that gets put back to the public, or if it expires in 28, when does it go back to the public to renew?
Yes, we're looking at that now. Typically, it would be even potentially before 2027, because of the way the cycles run. So there are rules about millage. We're not allowed to do more than one millage per year. So if we were to go for a millage in 27 and it didn't pass, we'd have to come back in '28, which would be putting it really, really close to when we're kind of needing the funding. So typically would go actually 2 years before, or a year and a half, because it's usually in the fall. We haven't made that determination, whether it will be spring or fall at this point. But last time we did it the fall, which would be 2 calendar years before, but about a year and a half before it would take effect.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dina? Jesse?
Yeah, I was hoping to get a little bit of background on the decision to postpone what was it called? The component I was mostly interested in was the FAIR study, but then also the project that the FAIR study was, or the new FAIR system was a part of.
Okay, sure. I think what you're referring to, I'm going to ask you just to make sure I'm answering the right question.
Intelligent transportation. something or other.
ITS, yes, okay. So there was a change that we talked about in our issue brief, and I think that's what Jesse's referring to, from the draft budget that we presented last month to the recommended budget. In the capital budget, we reduced our capital budget for 2026 because we postponed or pushed out an ITS project, which is essentially a potential replacement of our CAD AVL system, which is the system that runs all of the, for the service and all of the user tools and things like that for, so that you know where your buses are and monitors and stuff like that. So those are all nearing the end of their useful life. And we had originally thought that we would be able to replace that next year. When we looked at the calendar and the ideal time to replace that system, the ideal time to replace that system is in the summer when we have a lower numbers of passengers in case there's any kind of hiccup or anything like that. So the decision was, when we looked at that and thought where we are today to get to fiscal '26 summer, it's less than a year away. We really haven't even started. So we're going to start working on that now. It's not going to be completely delayed where we're not doing anything. But what we think is that it's such an important system for us that it will require more time and more planning to make sure that it gets executed properly. So what we did was we made an internal decision to push that to the following summer, which pushes it into fiscal year 2027. We are still going to start the FAIR study that will inform what we're doing. So we'll be we're actually already starting to write the FAIR study parameters for what we're going to look for in the FAIR study. And we are already starting to meet to discuss the CAD AVL project. It's just going to take a little bit more time. We wanted to allow ourselves the time that we needed to execute it properly.
I'm a little bit disappointed. I was excited for it's probably one of the things that I hear the most is, people remarking on the FAIR payment system or the bus tracking info, which I think is also part of the same project, the intelligent transportation system.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I was a bit surprised that a project that was going to have this much of an impact was pushed off this late in the budgeting process. I was kind of looking at, we've had this presentation several times, to kind of have this come on the last meeting was a lot to take. So do you know, did we not catch this before, or?
No, I think it's just when we were evaluating initiatives and projects, so the corporate business planning cycle completed in around June or July. It was in that time frame. So once that was complete, we then knew all the projects that we had to do. So it was July and August when we were reviewing all of the items in the corporate business plan to say, do we have the resources? Do we have the capacity we need? And during that time, we also identified that with everything else we have to do, we would have to postpone other things and stop doing that in order to make sure that that could happen on time. And even if we did that, it would be risky because that project should take about 12 to 18 months. We'd be trying to condense it down into about 9 or 10 months, which would be risky. And it's just too big and important a project and too expensive of a project to take that kind of risk.
That makes sense. And then, so the project there is some money in the budget going towards this project, as you say, there will be work done. So what was the component that is being pushed off? Or are we just talking about like when it's one of those things that will equal out over the course of 2 years?
It's just, the full implementation won't be completed until summer of 2027 instead of 2026. But we will start the planning, we will start mobilizing, we will start evaluating what we think we need to do and ramp up for implementation well ahead of that. This provides us a lot more runway to do that. And I think Matt looked like he might want to say something. So.
Sure. Thank you. I think Dina's excellent answering these questions perfectly, but apologize for the disappointment and the no one likes to be blindsided. We were having sort of these hard management team conversations, as I think you would want us to do. And it really became apparent with everything else we have going on, we can either do this badly or do it right. And to do it right means taking a little bit longer. I've unfortunately been privy to several rushed technology projects. You may have seen what that looks like. Some of us may know what that looks like. It doesn't look good. It's difficult to overstate how important these two pieces of technology are, how their tendrils snake into almost every other part of our back office computer systems. And all of that needs to be accounted for. The runway she mentioned is we got to do our planning correctly. And we realized we just didn't have time to do that by next summer. Just with everything else we've got going on, it wasn't going to happen. So we all agreed, it was a unanimous executive decision, that we need to push it off a year to make sure the quality is there. A lot of the concerns that we have today, and I think the comments you hear, are with the current AVL real-time information system. The deployment of that one was rushed. That's part of the reason we're here 10, 11 years later, kind of going, gosh, this thing never really did what we wanted it to do. So we want to do it right this time. Hard decision. I apologize for the disappointment, but I do think it's the right choice.
I second that, and I'd also like to add, we have put this project above other projects that we also think are very important. This is the first large technology project that we're undergoing in our capital plan. So we didn't prioritize any other technology project that came out of the capital needs assessment above this. So we feel that this is the right way to go. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Dina? Seeing none, thanks, Dina.
Okay, so I'll just kind of wrap up by noting that we are, again, respectfully requesting the budget approval this evening. Copy of the resolution is in your packet. And for anyone else who's watching or interested, our budget and business plan are on our website. That concludes my presentation. Thank you all.
Thank you. One moment. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the budget and accept the resolution as written in your board packet to accept the budget? Simi, seconded by Rich. Is there any discussion on the motion that we are talking about the resolution that's on page 47 of your packet? Would you like me to read the resolution out loud for the public? I'd be happy to. So the resolution number 52025, approval of the fiscal year 2026 operating and capital budget, resolution of the Board of Directors of the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority. Whereas the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority, AAATA, Board of Directors is required by the Michigan Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act of 1968 to adopt a balanced operating budget on or before October 30th for its next fiscal year, which begins on October 1. And whereas AAATA staff have developed a fiscal year 2026 operating and capital budget that furthers board ends policies within executive limitations and provides multi-year context. And whereas the AAATA is required to develop a fiscally constrained four-year program of projects for inclusion in the Transportation Improvement Program, also known as the TIP, to be submitted to the Washtenaw Area Transportation Study, known as WATS, in order to be eligible for federal funds. And whereas the AAATA is required to submit the capital program for fiscal year 2026 to the Federal Transit Administration, known as the FTA, as part of the annual application for fiscal year 2026 federal funding. And whereas the AATA is required to submit the capital program and operating budget for fiscal year 2026 to the Michigan Department of Transportation, MDOT, as part of the annual application for fiscal year 2026 state funding, which is amended by this resolution. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that the Board of Directors hereby approves the fiscal year operating and capital budget as its General Appropriations Act with total expenditures as follows: $71,477,067 for operations and $24,911,416 for capital investments. Be it also resolved that the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority Board of Directors hereby adopts the capital projects listed herein as updates to the fiscal year 2022 through 2025 TIP, of which fiscal year 2026 and beyond are subject to amendment in future years. Any discussion on the motion or on the resolution itself? It was set into motion by Simi, seconded by Rich. All those in favor, raise your hands. And that passed unanimously. Raise your hand, girl.
Oh, I did that.
All right, that passed unanimously. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, staff, for all the hard work that you've done on this budget. We're very excited. I can't speak for anybody else, but I know that I'm very excited that it's balanced and everything is looking so very promising for our future. Next, I understood while I was away, apologies. Thank you, Jesse, for taking over. I appreciate that. We did vote in, I imagine, financial planning and budgeting was accepted 100%. Is there any policy language discussion that's needed on 2.4? Seeing none, then we'll move on to 7.1, fiscal year 25, core goal 3, service report, and that is Mr. George Brooks.
Good evening, everyone.
So George, now is the time we expect a song and dance. This may take a couple minutes. Would anyone like to take a bio break while we're waiting? No? Okay.
Give Rich a minute.
Yeah. George, you can go ahead and start if you'd like.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Going to give you the Q3 quarterly service report. Starts off in your correlation of your packet on page 49. Mostly very good news. Our fixed ride ridership is moving up nicely. It's 14% above from year over year. As I said, our boardings are up, our complaints are down, collisions are trending down also. Okay, correlation to page 50 in your packet, the cost of boarding has remained steady. Our fixed route on-time performance has remained well above our goal of 80% at 84.3%. Moving on to page 51 of your packet. Looking at MV, things are looking well. 0 trip denials. Also, our TheRide cost of ridership per boarding. Total ADA trips are up pretty much steady at 1%. Cost of boarding slightly ticked up 6%. Our TheRide Gold Ride Premium service is up, not much, by 2%, and also our Gold Ride has remained flat ridership. Moving on to Flex Ride or VIA. This is where some of our challenges surface. On a positive note, year over year, our service is up 78%. Where we struggle is on our holidays. Just recently on Labor Day, we hit another record trip request, over 700 trips requested. That's where most of our denials come from. We've reached a point of saturation where we can provide more and more service with the current budget that we have. We routinely meet with them and work on them as far as trying to get them to improve the amount of people that ride for efficiency. But we're not 100% where we need to be. I've been working with Rich a little bit. We're talking about developing a little bit better key performance indicators to just give a better picture. I anticipate having that ready for you for the next quarterly report. But that's where we stand. We're providing record amounts of service, but we just can't go farther with what we're spending right now. It's a very expensive service. Our late night and holiday service has raised or increased by 70% year over year. And as you can see, it's just a matter of how much we're being asked to provide. I think we're struggling with how successful we have become by putting out this service. Moving on to Vanpool. Vanpool ridership, or I should say rides per Vanpool, has decreased due to the VA cutting back on the amount of Vanpools. That's our biggest customer. And they wanted to reduce their expenses. So what they did is they reduced the total amount of Vanpools, but each van is much more full now with veterans. So even though the amount of total van pools are down, we've actually had an increase in the number of riders. Anybody have any questions?
I have a
Go ahead.
Irving first.
I apologize, I am new to the board. Can you explain there's a graph that says cost/boarding. So it's fixed route cost per boarding. What is it, what is it? Can you explain that a little bit more? I'm looking at this graph and I'm not really sure what we're calculating here.
It's pretty much, to explain it, it's pretty much the cost of each ride.
For the business, for us?
Yes.
Okay, got you.
Yes.
Is that-
Anyone else?
I'm sorry, just, is that per rider or is this the route?
Per ride. Putting it all together and breaking it down per ride,
Wow.
divided into the cost.
And if it's confusing a little bit, I know you're probably looking at that $37.76 and how it dropped so much. That's because of the pandemic, cost of per boarding, because we couldn't board as many passengers, because we were cleaning and all of that. That's why that cost was so high during 2020.
I guess just looking at this for the first time, seeing $9.20 per
Understood.
ride, and the cost of operations is, if, as a citizen, probably would think it's expensive to run our services, so.
It is. Even if you look a little closer, it's even worse when you look at, like, say, TheRide. But we're working on it. I don't know if we'll ever be really great at being super efficient, especially when it comes to TheRide. But if you look across America, industry standards, almost nobody collects what the true cost is at the fare box.
All right, and I have one more question, if that's okay. So for the TheRide, you had mentioned that there's denials and, especially around Labor Day. Is that just because there's not enough services or not enough drivers or not enough availability? What is the denial based on?
We have the ability to put out 10 vehicles maximum, and that's what we anticipate during the holidays, putting out as much service as we possibly can. We're even thinking about, okay, how do we better meet the demand as far as scheduling? And we've had a lot of struggles with that also because people have a tendency to pre-book and then cancel at the last minute, which negatively affects the people that could have been given that service. So we're weighing, how do we handle that? Do we have like a penalty, a financial penalty for the people that cancel at the last minute? We're trying not to do that, but that may be a possibility in the future.
Thank you.
Rich, you had a question?
Yeah, actually, a series of questions, but they all work together. I'm trying to remember, like, what is our typical demographic for TheRide?
What is our demographic?
Yeah, typical rider demographic for who uses TheRide. Do we know offhand?
It's a lot. Sometimes it's, we have nurses, we have people using it to get to work, medical students, where we have people going to doctor's appointments. So there's a lot of different, many people use it for work. And I think the expectation, a lot of the initially over the last year, a lot of people felt that it was more like it should be used as Uber. Many people didn't really like sharing rides with each other. So in order to be efficient, we're trying to bump that up from like 1.8 rides per vehicle to get it up to closer to 3 so that we can better serve the community.
Yeah, so the reason why I'm asking is, I mean, like, the numbers show that the boardings is, and it's gonna be basically, I'm guessing, double what it was in Q1 come Q4, right? Because it was 6,700 in Q1, it was 11,000 in Q3. And like you said, we're kind of like a victim of our success. And sometimes when you have that, you have to kind of quell, like this, I can see this just the trajectory continuing up. And I just want to make sure, like, our typical demographic, for instance, isn't like a low income rider where they're having to rely on this to get around. I think that's why we have the other services. I don't know if maybe we need to, at least for this year, because we already approved the budget. We said it's a funding challenge that maybe we have to consider bumping the fee for TheRide, because it sounds like, and I could be wrong, and I'm open to be corrected, but it sounds like a lot of these folks, they are using it for work, and there are other options, such as Uber, Lyft, or whoever, that maybe we need to just temporarily push them for this year over to utilize those other services. Because I think all of us, one denial we're not happy with, and have this many, and it's not because the VIA service is poor or that they don't care or anything, it's the state of the available vehicles that we have.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's a way to just kind of get people to be like, hey, you know, there's other services out there, you need to consider using them instead of relying on us where they're very limited resources.
Yeah. It's something that we've thought about in the same vein as you mentioned. Do we raise the price, but then we would hurt the lower rung people? But then we're serving a mass of people that probably could afford to use Uber, but I think we're charging $10 a ride when the ride's costing us significantly much more. So it's a tough call. You know, where do we draw the line? How do we make sure the people that truly need it get the service, and those who really don't need it get weaned off of it? It's a tough call.
It is a tough call, and when you're talking about your vulnerable people who are low income and whatnot, as an example, I know of a young woman who works at the hospital at Trinity. It's not walkable.
Yeah.
And so she relies on our services on the holidays. She's low income, and Uber and Lyft and everyone, I don't know if anybody's tried to take one on a holiday before, but to go less than a mile can be $20 or $30 just for one ride on a holiday. So I imagine that also makes our product or our service much more attractive to everyone. Even those who could normally afford an Uber and a Lyft are facing those same upcharges on a holiday.
Yeah. Our riding public knows that it's a great value, and it's just growing and growing.
Yeah.
No, I think I'm good for now.
I
Thanks.
was gonna ask, have we, considering, because it is a lot of hospital employees, has there been any discussions with the hospitals to help subsidize or support those staff members trying to get to work?
Not yet, no. We can definitely look into that, though.
Rich?
I guess I will ask this question. It's more for the board, because I don't think we have an executive limitation or anything around trip denials. I mean, is there something that, because I know that staff probably stresses about, like I said, like just one denial. I just see, for instance, in Q3 we had 521. I'm sure that makes them extremely unhappy. Is there something on the board side where we say like, hey, a certain number is acceptable for this fiscal year of 2026 that's upcoming? So they at least have something they can work with. Because right now it's nebulous, I think, right? Because I don't think we have anything set. Does anyone remember?
For me, it's not about the, I don't know, I also see it as, are people moving towards micromobility? Are they thinking that this is ride share? The question is like, what is the root cause, right? Is it unavailability? Is it the demand? Is it a shift in usage? Is it the lower cost? So I'm worried that if we say that's a requirement, maybe it's just evaluate. I don't know. I'm just thinking like evaluate what the root causes of, and then maybe next year during the budget, that's funding is shifted towards more micromobility or like flex ride for the evenings. I'm just wondering why is this occurring? Has there been any evaluation? So.
Yeah, I think you have, right, George? You've done evaluation of that?
Not much more than realizing that the demand is just going up and up and up. We haven't really delved into why is it so. We have theories, of course. Number one, I think, is it's a great value. You're basically getting a $50 service for $10. So.
Well, and you just mentioned that the amount of denials is more on holidays, and our fixed route doesn't run on a holiday.
Right.
So that makes it even more challenging, and it also makes it challenging that areas like Pittsfield, like Trinity Hospital, that would normally get service during the week, don't get service from Flex Ride on a holiday because it's not part of Pittsfield's POSA. So it's very challenging for everyone. I don't know that I would feel comfortable as a board member setting a limitation on what we would accept as trip denials. I see that more as they need to figure that out on the staff end, and I don't know if it would be wise for us to set meansy parameters like that, but I would really be interested to hear what other board members have to say. Susan?
So I think that this should be referred to Service Committee, for one thing. I think that there's a real interest on the part of many of us, and many of us serve on Service Committee. I also think that it would be helpful if staff sort of go backwards on why there is FlexRide. As I remember it, I might not remember it correctly, there are areas of our area that are not really adaptable to fixed route. And this is our alternative to serve our communities. So I think going back to why we have it is a piece of it, but letting Service Committee delve into some of the issues, asking questions about potential partnerships with the hospitals is an excellent idea. And we've created other partnerships, so why not this? So I think the committee would be the best place to have a deeper dive, to understand it better, rather than solving it until we know exactly what's going on. If that's, I'm sitting next to the chair, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman. I volunteered him.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And just, let's just get a little consensus on the rest of the board. Are we all amenable to that? I think that's a really good suggestion,
Yeah.
Susan. And thank you, Simi, for taking that task on.
Yeah, thank you. Just have my back to it all the time.
Are there any other questions or comments? I do have a quick one. I wanted to understand, when we say on-time performance, can you tell me what the parameters are for on-time? Like, is it 5 minutes either side of the time slot? I just would like to have a better understanding of that, especially during this time of year where we have, like, say, the number 6 route that is on 4 different detours, and, you know, I can't imagine how hard that must be, but I would just like to understand what you mean by on-time performance.
On-time performance, you usually have a goal no matter what organization you're with. I believe ours is 3 minutes before, 3 minutes after.
Okay.
This year has been a real struggle. During the construction season, at one time, we had 16 detours while we were trying to meet, customers' needs. Now, we're down to about 9 right now, but I really big kudos out to the operations and planning team for making this a success through this quarter.
Awesome, thanks. And there were no other questions? Thank you, George.
Yep.
We're going to move on to, Jeff is not here. I see Matt, you're going to be doing the legislative updates this evening?
Surprise. Yes, Jeff is on vacation, so I'm pitch hitting. May remember, feels like what it was before Jeff was here. But no, I will do a much better job because Jeff has provided me with some notes, and I'm very proud of our state association. They are doing much more this year than in previous years. Full credit to our new executive director at the Michigan Public Transit Association, John Dolmas. I'm seeing a lot more oomph and hustle out of the state association. So had an update from them this morning. So add that to Jeff's notes. So a couple of things on the federal and state level. I'll start with the feds and a couple of relatively pieces of good news. So we are seeing movement on the low-no grant program, slowly, glacially making its awards. The city of Detroit had, in addition to the 2024 grant, same time we got ours, they had an earlier one from 2022 that finally got approved, fully obligated. That was for, I think, 4 battery electric buses, which the administration has on record not being a fan of. So if that moved through, that bodes well. We also understand that quite literally they're going grant by grant. Everything that was approved in the Biden administration is getting at another level of scrutiny before it gets moved out the door. So we're hopeful that if we just are patient and wait our turn, 2022, then 23, we're in 24, we'll get there. We've budgeted for it in 2027, so, we're hopeful. So there we go. Other good news from the federal level, as budgeting begins to move forward, all the proposals that we're seeing are very favorable for public transit, coming from the president's proposal sees a lot of transit funding. The House and Senate versions that are being kicked around also see full funding for transit in the federal level. There's some regulatory reform that we're excited about. So we're actually, there's a lot of difficult things at the federal level, Department of Education and a few others. Transit so far, well positioned. However, A lot of uncertainty remains about when there will be a federal budget. And the potential for a federal government shutdown is moving closer. Continuing resolution is quite possible. Could be short-term or long-term. This is, you just turn on the news and watch for a little while and you'll get a sense of that. Earmarks are in, they're out, they're in, they're out, we don't know. We do have still a $750,000 request that has come through us, through Senators Peters and Slockins. Thanks to Jeff and to Dina for moving that forward. For security measures at the YTC. Hopefully that will also be moving forward. Stay tuned. And then recently at the new FTA administrator let all the transit agencies know that the administration is very concerned about public safety and security. This stems from a tragic fatality in North Carolina where a young lady was stabbed to death, unfortunately. Very tragic situation. One might say it's gotten a great deal of public attention for a variety of reasons. But the FTA has let all of us know that they may come by and tap on our shoulder and ask to see our security plans. Coincidentally, we just hired our consultant to do our safety review. So I think we're well positioned to say we're kind of on the ball and moving forward on that. Before I go to the state thing, Dina, anything you'd like to add on the federal level?
Just a couple little things. Matt mentioned the potential for a budget shutdown, and I wanted to address that. In the IIJA bill, if there is a government shutdown, the IIJA bill exempts transit funding from shutting down. So the good news for us on that is, although it wouldn't be likely that we'd be able to get new grants or obligate new grants, any grants that we have and that are obligated, we still would be able to draw down on. So we are in the process of trying to obligate several different pieces of funding right now, and hopefully that would get through before that happens. But any funding that we have awarded and obligated, we would still be able to draw down. So that's a good thing that IIJA did. Also just wanted to mention on the federal side, at the conference, we heard Mark Molinaro, who is the FTA administrator, speak, and just wanted to share with you a few highlights of things because they really pertain directly to us. And I'm kind of proud of some of the things we've done with the board, and I just wanted to highlight that. So first of all, Administrator Molinaro spoke very passionately about safety and security, and that being a very high priority for the administration. So as Matt said, we are already on the move in terms of updating and developing a comprehensive safety and security plan for all of our facilities and our systems. So we're on the ball there, and we're hoping that we're going to continue to get some additional earmark funding, as Matt talked about. He also talked about getting projects done and how important that was for the administration. I don't know that that's necessarily a new thing. Everybody wants to move forward on projects. It was a little difficult to sit through that in some ways because part of getting things done requires the funding that we need. So, we're not oblivious to that, and we're certainly making those points when it's the right time. But it is concerning that, they reduced the FTA significantly and want us to execute on projects where their funding is still kind of being held. So hopefully that spirit will come through and that funding will get freed up. He also mentioned not using capital funding for operating. And I don't know, many of you were here when we did the last millage and might remember that one of our millage proposals was to eliminate using any capital funding for operating, which we had been doing on a small basis. So that's in line with what this administration is looking for when they're looking for awarding grant funding. So we're happy to say that could be in the plus column for us when we're applying for discretionary grants. Additionally, he stressed not using one-time funding for ongoing costs, which we have talked about that several times internally and with the board about how we're not doing that. So you know that we have the reserve, which is what was generated by the pandemic relief funding, and we're using that for capital projects, but not for ongoing costs. to cover things that local funding should. So just wanted to point out those really exciting things that we heard, and that it seems like the RIDE is in lockstep with what the administration is looking for.
Thank you. So that's the federal. I will switch now to the state, and I hate to say that the state makes the feds look good right now. As of, I think, yesterday morning, the information I have is that talks on the state budget are not going well. A shutdown appears increasingly likely. We are now 12 days away from the end of the fiscal year. Furlough notices have begun going out automatically to state employees because there's like sort of a 2-week requirement. There is a lot of finger pointing in Lansing. The Republicans in the House and the Democrats in the Senate and the governor's mention are pretty far apart, not on math, not on haggling, but on some apparent basic fundamentals and philosophical differences. Fundamental differences in political goals, differences on even how to approach the process of starting to talk about reconciling their different aspirations. I heard the statement from a Lansing insider as of yesterday. There was no clear way forward right now. So that is rough. Looking into the eyes of some of the people who've been around Lansing for a long time, I noticed that their estimates for how long a shutdown could last have been slowly creeping up from, it would only be a couple of hours, to yesterday I heard not just days, but weeks. 3 weeks on the outside. On the outside? What happened to 3 hours? Let's go back to 3 hours. So that was a bit of an eye-opener to me, but I think is indicative of kind of how challenging the environment is in right there. And there's challenges on both sides. The Republicans in the House are putting a lot of emphasis on their search for waste, fraud, and abuse. You may have heard these terms. It feels like a little mini Elon Musk Doge exercise. We're gonna find the problems in government we know are there, even if we can't actually sort of point to them. It is not clear if a shutdown would, or the pressure from a shutdown would bring them to the negotiating table or just reinforce members of their base who want them to do that. So it's not clear yet how that pressure would actually work, and will it work in the way it normally does of embarrassing both parties to get them back to the table. They do have a proposal. They have proposed putting quite a bit more money into the state LBO funding, $60 million, which would be great. But they've put a rider on it that is attached to fare box recovery targets. For us would be 10%. We don't quite achieve that yet. It's not clear where that idea came from or how much support it is for it, but it is sticking right now. And again, kind of along the lines of government efficiency is how it's being portrayed. If it were approved, be good on one hand, but could also be challenging. We've not had a target like that in this jurisdiction that would affect how we do budgeting, how we do service planning, a variety of other things if we're now chasing money with that kind of caveat on it. On the same time, on the other side of the aisle, the Democrats in the Senate have not brought forward a road funding plan as part of their proposals, which the governor has said she must have. The governor herself was gone for a little while, but now she's back, and did say in public that she would veto the House's budget, which seemed to provoke, I don't want to say sulking, but just disappeared for a while. So at least the governor and the Senate, I think, are sort of uniting, as you would hope the Democrats might do, or any party might do. But the Republicans are remaining firmly entrenched in their position. And as I understand it, they don't even have sort of the beginnings of how do we talk about reconciling our budget stuff. And we have 12 days. So this is not boding well. If we were to have a state government shutdown, it would not be immediately impactful to us or our riders. So there's a positive thing. We have, as Dina mentioned, fully funded reserves, including an operating reserve, which exists exactly for this purpose, to act as a buffer on our cash flow. The only time this reserve has been used in this at all was the last state government shutdown. So this is what this tool is for. A prolonged shutdown, I think it would shut MDOT down in the Office of Passenger Transportation. So unlike the FTA, we would start having reimbursable expenses not being processed. Things like this would start to back up. And then when it was fixed, there'd be a big backlog and it would take a while. It'd be a cash flow problem only. We will be okay as long as this doesn't go on for half a year or something. Smaller transit agencies will suffer enormously, particularly in rural areas across the state where they're moving on very, very, very thin margins. So it would interestingly affect some of the most rural parts of the state directly, not just in transit, but I'm sure in education and other places. I understand the education budget may get moved first, if anything does, because schools started and their paychecks are coming in and the schools are getting ready to submit expense vouchers to the state, and there's sort of a regular cadence there. Unfortunately, things are not looking good at the state level. I think we should prepare for a shutdown that may last more than a couple of days. Again, we've got all our ducks in a row. Dina's group is processing every reimbursable that we can, get it out the door, try to beat the rush. But I think we'll be okay. But it will be a sign of sort of political leadership dysfunction at a state level. Be very unfortunate. Dina, is there anything you would add at a state? Okay, thank you. With that, completes my legislative update on Jeff's behalf. He would probably have said it better. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Does anyone have any questions from Matt? Jesse?
And I think I know the answer to this, but if there's a shutdown, we need to dip into our reserves. A shutdown doesn't mean like, once the government gets back, like you said, you called it a backlog, we will get that money. We will be able to replenish the reserve once government comes back.
As long as they put the money that they've been talking about putting into transit, that's the case. And we really have no reason to think that they wouldn't, that they're, the 226 million that's kind of been in the works the whole time has remained pretty consistent. It's possible it could be lower. It's possible it could be higher. They're putting all kinds of strings on the potential for the higher amounts. And we, like I said before, we don't know. You saw, maybe remember in the cash flow or in the cash position chart, we get most of our money at the beginning of the fiscal year. So like we just received all the property tax revenues and all of that. So we're at our highest cash position at this point in time, which should be fine to carry us through several months, but it wouldn't carry us through the entire budget year. We'd be dipping into reserves, there'd be all kinds of things. So, but that's much later in the year. But I do think that anything that we spend at this point, we can reasonably expect to get reimbursed. And if it does go down and we find that out, we could address it throughout the rest of the year. So we'd still get reimbursed probably for what we submitted now, but we might have to look at what we do for the rest of the year.
So you're not, in short, you're not at this point concerned about long-term ramifications if we do need to go into the.
No, I'm not
Not saying there
concerned with
won't be any
long-term.
ramifications, but they're not as concerned, they're not like of a particular concern.
Right, I'm not particularly concerned with cash flow at this point. I'm more concerned about federal funding, or I'm sorry, state funding going forward. So if it's 24% this year, if it equates to that, then that's likely to be the same, or, I mean, I don't know if it'd be more next year, but if it starts dipping below that 26% that we built into the budget, you could see how close those revenue and expense lines were in that projection, that they were almost like right on top of each other. So if that revenue source starts to decline or continues to decline over the next 2 to 3 years, you know, that's gonna be significant for us, and maybe other revenues would compensate for it, but we wouldn't know that quite yet.
Thank you.
And it is sort of a two-part thing. You have the impact of the shutdown, and then what is the budget decision that reopens the government? And again, what is the LBO funding that comes out of that? So two separate things. But this is what the operating reserve is built for. This is its entire purpose.
Any other questions for Matt? Seeing none, you're not off the hot seat. It is now time for the CEO report.
Couple of things. We had a successful visit to the U of M bus garage. Thank you to Simi for suggesting that. I'm glad we were able to do it. Bus rodeo coming up in a week or so with us and the University of Michigan Bus Services squaring off who can maneuver buses with greater precision. We'll beat them again. State Association had an annual meeting upstate in Crystal Mountain in August. I've asked, they don't have a lot right now for board members, but it is something they're considering improving and increasing. So I've asked Deb to put a save the date in all of your calendars about the Michigan Public Transit Association annual meeting. It's a fun thing. Perhaps a few of you will manage to get up there over the next few years, but I'd like to start doing that. And that is all, Madam Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Rich.
I just had a fun request, hopefully. For the bus rodeo, is there a way we can get that streamed on like Facebook or something?
I don't know, but we can ask
highly
Jeff
wish
if
this.
it's possible to stream the bus rodeo. We'll ask. Let's make a note of that, Deb.
Is there costumes involved?
There is not. It's not a rodeo in that respect. Although, why not? A bus rodeo is an obstacle course of pylons where drivers take turns doing precision maneuvers with the bus. It is not a fast rodeo, as you might imagine. It's more precision. And it covers a fairly wide space. So streaming it, we'd have to figure out if we can get a camera to do some close-ups. I can imagine, how close can you get the wheel to the pylon? That might be fun.
Maybe, can an audience come? Can people watch?
Absolutely, audiences are welcome. I think Kathleen's been in previous
I have
years.
been, and I was going to say it's a very exciting, I encourage anyone who has the opportunity to go. It's a great way to see how the drivers between the two systems bond with each other, how the drivers are competitive but support each other. And there's one that they do that they are driving through increasingly narrowing pylons with a pylon on the end with an egg. And they have to go as quickly as they can. They can't go below a certain speed limit and then stop in front of that pylon with the egg and not hit it. And it's kind of exciting to watch all of that. So if you get a chance to go, I highly recommend it. It's fun. So anyway, sorry, that was my 2 cents. Were there any questions for Matt on the CEO report as it was given? All right, thank you so much. We're going to move on to officer elections. We are holding elections for treasurer, secretary, and the chair. In accordance with our, the nominations are going to come from the floor. Offices are filled one at a time by a roll call vote. Officers who are elected will take place in this month, will take office on October 1, and it is for a 1-year term. We'll start off with treasurer. I know Mike is not here, but he indicated he'd be interested in staying, so I'm going to nominate Mike on his behalf. And I'm wondering, do we have any nominations for the floor? Are there any other nominations for treasurer? All right, y'all. All right, so for, we still need to take a roll call vote, even though there's only one. And so I'm going to start with Simi. Simi, do you, all those are you in favor of electing Mike Alamang for treasurer for fiscal year 2026?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Georgia?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Julie? Yes. Pravina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
And myself, I'm a yes. That passed 100%. Thank you, everyone. Next is secretary. Do we have any nominations for the floor, from the floor for secretary?
Nominate Jesse Miller.
I would like to nominate our current secretary.
Okay.
If Jesse Miller, if he is so willing to do so.
You're willing? Okay. Do we have any other nominations from the floor? Seeing none, we'll do the same roll call. Simi?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Georgia?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Pravina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Myself is a yes. All right.
Thank you.
And then the last position is for the position of chair. Do we have any nominations from the floor?
I'd like to nominate Kathleen Mozak for holding the chair again, please.
Are there any other nominations from the floor? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote one more time. Simi?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Georgia?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Pravina?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
And I will accept and I will vote for myself, yes. All right, thank you, everyone. Now we are going to move on to action item recap. That would go to Deb.
All right. I had a note that we are going to add a discussion to the service committee agenda on some FlexRide challenges. And I also just really quickly forwarded everyone the calendar invitation for the bus rodeo. It's actually for this Sunday, but it has all the information in the calendar invitation. And that was all that I had. Was there anything that I
Have
missed?
anything else? Did we miss anything? Matt?
I'm going to look into streaming the bus rodeo
And
Very good,
costumes.
thank you, sir.
and costumes. I will ask about costumes, as long as it's not me.
Just a rodeo
Very
hat,
good.
just a stampede.
Next on the agenda is topics for next meeting. We will have closed sessions for the next few months, and in the future, we will be receiving education on state funding. As a reminder, our next meeting is here at the AADL, I believe. It's not written on our thing, but I do believe it is here, October 16th, and that is when we begin our new start time. So everybody put it on your calendar. We're starting at 6. Dinner will be ready at 5:15? 5:15. All right. Lastly, well, not lastly, we do have public comment, 9.3. Is there anyone online?
There is no one online.
All right, we will close public comment then and move on. We do have a closed session this evening, 9.4, and I just want to set this up. So we need to take a roll call vote to go into closed session, but we also need to take a roll call vote to come out of session. And once we come out of session, we must come back in here and formally adjourn. So no skittering away when we leave the other room. I need to remind everyone that this is pursuant to 8C of the Open Meetings Act. This closed session is for strategy connected with the negotiation of collective bargaining agreement. And we're going to vote now into the closed session. Chris Allen,
Yes.
Simi Bar,
Yes.
Rich Chang,
Yes.
Julie Grant,
Yes.
Jesse Miller,
Yes.
Susan Pollard,
Yes.
Ms. Pravina,
Yes.
Georgia Valentine,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Very good. That concludes the meeting here, and we will move across the hall, I believe, for closed session. Thank you,
And now
everyone.
is a good time.
Thank you, everyone. We return from our closed session, and now we are ready to adjourn. Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn? That would be Julie, seconded by Chris. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And we're gone. Thank you, everyone, for your patience.